Hi, everyone. My name is Karen Goodnough. I'm a professor in the Faculty of Education. So I'm also a science educator focused on teacher education as well. Our third colleague, Maurice Barry, is not with us today, but he is our teaching and learning coordinator who provided support during the study. Also, of course, we were helped tremendously by Darcy, so I want to do a shout out to Darcy, who provided us with lots of technical support during the study. So we're going to
This
start.
wasn't possible without you, Darcy.
Yes, I know. Very helpful. Thank you so much. So we're going to start by explaining our conception, the model of Hyflex that we used. So first of all, we'll share our goals. So we would like you to keep in mind, no, that's fine. You can, yeah, that's good. Keep in mind, I want you to keep in mind as we talk about our study, is that this was mainly a self-study focused on us. Saiqa was the instructor in a course, and I was acting as a critical friend. Now, even though we went through the ethics review process and obtained that was approved, we didn't actually collect a lot of data from students. So this is really about understanding the Hyflex model and some of the roles, responsibilities of the instructor, being cognizant too of students. So once again, unlike the other study, we didn't collect a lot of data from students. That would be our next step. So this was a very small exploratory self-study. So Saiqa, maybe you might want to talk a little bit about the rationale from how COVID led to this Hyflex project.
Yeah, sure. So I think some of the questions I was seeing in the previous presentation are coming up. So I hope that we will be able to answer some of those questions, because I think that was the main focus. Especially someone said, the philosophies of online courses are very different from face-to-face. And particularly, when we were teaching a science education course, which is very hands-on, based on experiential learning. So what did we learn? So actually, as you know, we all were in a situation when during pandemic, we were kind of forced to offer our courses, remotely or online, and quite challenging, I think, like for everyone else. But I found, like many others, it was a great professional learning opportunity, because I thought that I was rethinking about my science education courses in a very new light. And that was not just, how to change this course or offer this remotely or online. Some of my ideas that I was rethinking, that was actually mainly about how to engage students in online and remote learning environments, as well as how to be more and more inclusive as science teacher educator. While I was thinking about that, so for sure, there were lots of things that we developed new resources, we came across new technologies that could be used. So I will be giving you a little bit of the context of the course which we used for this project. So this is the course is called Science in Primary Elementary Grades, and this is a methodology course for undergraduate teacher candidates, undergraduate students who are actually K-6 teacher candidates. So the course is actually underpins mainly experiential learning and constructivist learning theories, as well as it also supports formative assessment practices. So course is actually has many different units and topics, such as, we need to teach these students what is scientific literacy and how they can actually develop scientific literacy among K-12 learners. So in that case, we have to really provide them hands-on science explorations where they can actually design those experiences and learn how they will be conducting these type of experiences in their own classrooms. Similarly, we have, many other units, how young children learn science, and how what type of alternative ideas, misconceptions they might have, and how we can actually deal with that. So while we were thinking about all these topics and ideas, and now we came up with this some of the resources. So the course started working pretty fine, and I had the opportunity to teach this course a couple of times. So we actually ended up including some of the elements of online learning, such as discussion forums. So we never used them in our face-to-face classroom before pandemic. And similarly, I found this and other technology like Padlets. They were really helpful in engaging students. So then suddenly when we came to on campus, and still that was the situation where I think the whole idea of Hyflex came in, because now we were in classroom, but still some of the students, they had to miss their classes because either they will be ill, or there will be illness in the family. So like many other professors, so I will be providing them this opportunity that they could actually attend class synchronously, but some of them will be so sick that, you know, they will say, okay, can I do work on my own? So then I had to create a separate, you know, activity for them so they can actually work on their own. So Karen and I, we started having discussion about Hyflex model, and based on some of those experiences which happened right after pandemic, we decided to base our tile project on actually designing a Hyflex course and converting the whole course into Hyflex experiences, with the main purpose that we could actually understand what are the advantages or challenges associated with this course, particularly in context of a science education course. Yeah, would you like to add something?
No. I think how many students were in the class, Saiqa?
Usually these courses have students somewhere between 35 to 40.
Right.
But
So
this time when we actually practiced, we had 43 students in this class.
Right.
Pretty
So
complicated.
the other point, just before we get into later some of the things that we learned, most of the time for the course, the students want it to come to class. And we'll talk a little later about why very few opted to join us online. But we'll get to that in a moment. So as you all know, I mean, courses range from fully in-person courses to fully online, and a number of combinations in between. So in our view of a Hyflex model, you offer students in terms of face-to-face, synchronous participation in a class, or asynchronous. You offer all three modalities for each class. And that was our conception of Hyflex that we explained to the students and encouraged them, for whatever reason, if they couldn't come to class, they could join us synchronously, or they could complete activities that should be equivalent to face-to-face learning in terms of outcomes online. So if we look at the next slide, we'll see this is our definition of Hyflex. So it combines face-to-face and online, but there are three modes: face-to-face, synchronous online, and online asynchronous. So regardless of the format, which one the students opt for, they should be targeting the same outcomes. The learning experiences may not be identical, but the outcomes should be similar. So once again, like our previous presenter, we were guided in terms of conceptualizing the study and the course, or I should say the project, not the study, the project, in terms of these four principles: ensuring that students have accessibility to all experiences in the course, providing with choice. So we're getting at equity here. Equivalency in terms of the experiences may not be identical. They can't be identical, face-to-face versus online, but equivalent. And the other important factor here is reusability. As Saiqa said, she developed a number of resources when she was teaching during COVID. At that time, I was in a leadership position, so I wasn't teaching. I was supporting other people who were teaching. So a lot of the resources that were developed during COVID and offering the courses were reused in this particular project and tweaked and improved and changed depending on the outcomes. So our technology, once again, we had interactive cameras in the classroom, and we did struggle. We used a smart panel as well. and I don't have the specifics for the type of camera and that sort of thing, but maybe the next slide we'll have more information. Yeah, so it was a dual. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, because in the previous, I think it was not discussed, so I'm not sure what type of technology they have in there, but I think we were in a classroom which was equipped with video conferencing. And then we added some of these technologies, and I think they were quite helpful in terms of how to be more accessible to students who were on the other side of the screen. So we will talk a little bit more about that.
So a dual screen design, different inputs, as in a lot of classrooms in terms of desk PC, laptop, document camera, video conferencing, ceiling microphones to capture the audience and the presenter, and you could switch between audience facing or presenter facing cameras, and controlled through the interface at the beginning, or at the front of the room. So we want to talk, spend a bit of time talking about outcomes. Saiqa going to address the first one.
Yeah. So I think, as I said before, so this was an opportunity to rethink the whole curriculum. So previously, I think we always pick on the topics which are current, which are discussed in our research on science education. So I would say, I was trying to, how I put that the course was more focused or geared towards topics. While during this Hyflex model introduction, I think I ended up focusing more on creating independent modules where, every week was kind of a module starting with clear objectives, and then there will be, which I would call weekly discussion questions. There will be a discussion forum attached to each week. And that was for all learners, whether they were face-to-face, whether they were online, completing it online, or they were joining us synchronously. So this became really, kind of helped us to design the whole course, and it became very neat, a combination of modules designed for each week. And as I said, and other technology that helped us a lot to keep all three learners like engaged, because someone asked these questions of community building. So there was a Padlet that was designed for that module, and every student has to contribute in there. So those who will be face-to-face, they will be contributing in class, but those who are taking synchronously, they will be contributing to the same questions in the same way. And again, those who will be doing the module in their own time, they will also be using the same module. So this was an opportunity for them to engage on the same purposes. And online discussion forum, I think they were also helping a lot in terms of creating community in that courses. So I think the second thing that we learned, that was reusability, which is one of the main aspects of this Hyflex model. So as Karen said, I created lots of resources. I can give you one example. So for example, one of the module is about students learning, and we talk about, the alternative idea or misconceptions that students might have. So we provide, we use electricity unit from grade 6 as a context, and we actually, I have designed hands-on activities where actually they create the circuits, and then they do a lot of explorations around those circuits hands-on. Now, the question was, how do I create a similar experience for online learner? So I actually ended up finding a couple of online simulations. So I designed the exact same questions, but they were now able to use that simulation to perform the same exploration. But for some units, it was not possible. For example, we have this one unit where we teach about different levels of inquiry. So this was really difficult to do that. So the experience was same, like the objectives were same, but the actual simulation and their topics, they were different. So we did use lots of those materials and then, put together the whole Hyflex model. There were lots of challenges certainly still there, and they are always related with, engaging, how to engage students, and mainly how to make these courses accessible. Yes, Karen? Or
Yeah,
implementation?
yeah. So in terms of implementation, I'm going to sort of roll the implementation and student participation engagement together. So once again, my role in this study was as a critical friend, and I did visit the classroom, not every class, but I attended perhaps 70% of the classes to observe Saiqa as the instructor and to just informally observe the students. We never did get a lot of students joining us online. We might have one or two in each class, and we did have a few who opted at various points to complete the learning activities asynchronously. So they didn't actually join the class. So one of the things I noted early when Saiqa was facilitating was that sometimes she didn't spend nearly as much time addressing the students who were joining online synchronously. So I think after the first couple of classes, when things were a little more settled, then Saiqa became more conscientious about pulling those students in. But like the previous presenter said, that becomes one of the challenges, I think, for a teacher instructor in this model, is being cognizant of the needs of your online students that are joining the class synchronously and finding ways to engage both groups that are joining you synchronously and are there in the classroom. So that was one thing that we learned that you have to be really attentive to, is your online learners, your especially synchronous while you're teaching, which is no easy task to facilitate two groups. Now, we did have a TA, and that was very helpful because the TA could chat with the student. If there are any technical issues, that person could also help there. The other part you have to keep in mind too is if you have a TA, you have to spend time supporting that student, helping them understand a Hyflex model and ensuring that person knows their role in the Hyflex model and in the classroom. So that's another thing that requires time and energy as well, ensuring that that person is comfortable helping you, assisting in a Hyflex classroom. Some of the students that joined us online were there because they might have had medical appointments, they weren't feeling well, but I do distinctly remember a student being there, and Saiqa, you had asked a question and the student responded. And then as we moved into the lesson, at another point, you invited the student to participate, but she wasn't feeling well. So she more or less said, I'm going to opt out of this. She wanted to listen, but she didn't quite feel up to being a full participant in the class. So that's one of the challenges we know with any Hyflex online model. How do we ensure that students participate? And as Keith said, with the cameras turned off, it's difficult and challenging to interpret the body language. I think using some of the other tools besides the actual online platform, face-to-face and synchronously, like Padlet, Saiqa used that quite frequently, and some other tools help to engage students. So did you want to continue with that and also add anything else about technology, Saiqa?
Yeah, just one thing, Karen, I'm not sure if you were there. That was before the Hyflex model. I remember you came to some of my classes. I would say this also actually vary from group to group, because I remember I had a group, not with this model, in a previous course. And in that group, like the sense of community was really, really strong. And there will be, I remember a class where will be 6, 7 students on the screen and very actively, participating in the discussion. But usually with the rest of the groups, it was always a challenge, either to bring them on cameras or include them. So you have to rely on certain technologies. Yeah, so certainly we learn a lot about new technology. We became more well aware of the equipment we have in our class, or the equipment that we actually installed. So in all the discussions with the support people, I think we really learned a lot. And then for sure, this Padlet became really, really helpful in terms of offering this course. One challenge was always there, and that was, continuously in the need for classroom support. And Darcy was always there to help. But I would say if you do not have that type of classroom support, it might be quite challenging to actually deal with all this technology in your classroom.
So I think we just have a couple of other slides, just some snapshots of what the course looked like. So you can see the way Saiqa has set this up, that, you know, if you're joining the class face-to-face, here are the expectations, what you should do in terms of learning activities, synchronous participation, as well as asynchronous. So it seemed to me, once again, we didn't collect a lot of data from students. It seemed to me that, you know, one of our goals was to make this very clear for students so there wasn't confusion. And you can see this is just another snapshot of what we were doing in session 1, session 2. So as you know, online, it has to be very clear and no confusion or ambiguity in terms of expectations. So we did get a couple of students through who agreed to share some things with us, and this was once again approved by ethics. We hope, of course, to do this again in the future, maybe in another course, maybe a grad course, where we do have students who would opt for all 3 options on a regular basis for each class. Students like the flexibility. These 2 students like the flexibility, but they also acknowledged that they preferred face-to-face. And I think for a lot of our students, where they had been online so long, they really were enjoying and valuing the face-to-face experiences. The other thing we should note here. The other thing we should note here is that, you know, one of the students said, both of them, that there was more. They felt there was more work in the online environment versus being there face-to-face. And I think we've heard that before in terms of students' interpretations of online learning, and even instructors who are in the online environment, that it may require more work. But they did acknowledge the value of it and the flexibility and the freedom it offered. But these 2 students preferred face-to-face over the online environment.
I have heard a lot about this, that online was more work, and I think we had lots of discussion when we were planning on this, but still we will be certainly reconsidering that work. But I think the challenge was actually in class, it becomes easier because they are working in a group. So there are brainstorming of ideas. So the answers to the questions come quickly. But when they are thinking alone, I think that is probably where some of the challenges come, you know, how to respond, because in asynchronous, they had to develop a full 1 to 2 page response to the question and submit. And this is what they considered more work.
And I realize there are different ways to facilitate this. I mean, if you have a critical core online or synchronous, I mean, that could be a group in and of itself, or trying to connect the 2 groups and make sure they interact can become a challenge too, in terms of if you had a small group of students joining you synchronously and the face-to-face, how do you get them to connect and interact becomes a challenge as well. There are ways to do it, but that becomes a challenge. So once again, that was our small exploratory self-study, and we hope to build on that in the future.
Stop sharing?
Yeah. So we welcome any comments, questions, feedback.
I just saw Darcy's CITL star, and I completely agree. Okay, was WebEx used? Yes, WebEx was used as the conferencing, video conferencing, or, you know, for the synchronous mode.
I have a quick question, if you don't mind. Just wondering about the technology and getting used to having so much technology in the classroom, and you know, you got to learn how to use this piece and that piece. Did it take a little bit of time to become comfortable? And once you did, was it like, okay, this is no problem? Or, you know, was it something that was always, or maybe a little bit of a challenge, even going forward from day to day?
I think I learned a lot of the technology pretty quick. First 2, 3 weeks were really challenging. Darcy was always there in those classes to make sure that we start. We had a little bit problem towards the end of the weeks, but in between, I think I was pretty okay. Darcy just set the camera, so I knew if there is a demonstration that I have to see, where I have to put my material, where this camera will be, streaming. So that became, but it was challenging. I will not say anything else then. It was challenging juggling with all those pieces. It was. Okay.
So just a final comment. This was great professional learning. I think you would agree, Saiqa, you mentioned for both of us. I mean, it did start with COVID, but it also extended into, doing a review of the literature on Hyflex learning and blended learning, and for us to try and understand how you would actually structure this experience. So it may not look the same as what happened in other classes and other professors try it, but that's part of the professional learning.
Yeah, I think I can just make a last comment. I'm not sure if we talk about that. So when we will have actually 4 or 5 students, we will put them in a breakout room group. But if we will have only one student, so usually I will just ask any group to take that student. So they will have WebEx on their, everyone will have access to WebEx. So they will just bring that student quickly into their group, and then they will be like chatting and discussion. That was really interesting in terms of that community building type of thing. So they will quickly say, oh, we have her, because if they will have their friends. So I think that was really interesting piece that I observed during this course.
Perfect. And there's just one other comment. Norm had mentioned that numerous technical challenges significantly impacted the course delivery in his experience. Some courses simply cannot be made to work. So, Saiqa and Karen, thank you very much for your presentation. It was fabulous.